7 years have passed since my divorce, and at 45, I spend every night in loneliness, lying in bed until that cold Sunday night, still etched in my memory. The fatigue envelopes me like a heavy blanket as I sleep, and the usual silence fills every corner of the room. The door creaks open in the dark. Liam whispers, calling. "Mom," he answers. My son's voice from the other side. A whisper in the dark. The door slowly opens. And Liam steps into the room. He looks restless, wearing a t-shirt and sleep pants, no longer a child's clothes, but those of a 24-year-old man. The expression on his face awakens my protective instincts, but at the same time, I feel uncomfortable. "I can't sleep," he says finally, still staring down at the floor. "Come here," I reply, gently patting the space beside me on the bed. He hesitates for a moment before moving closer and sliding under the blanket. The bed creaks slightly under his weight, and now we lie side by side, only a few centimeters apart. Liam's warmth is almost palpable. I try not to look at him, but I can't help but notice that he is no longer a child. His features have become sharper. His shoulders are broader, and realizing this gives me a mixed feeling of confusion and embarrassment. "Mom," he whispers, turning towards me. Sometimes I feel so lonely here, his voice is so fragile that I don't know what to say. I reach out and place my hand on his shoulder without hesitation. He turns around and hugs me tightly. The intensity of his embrace surprises me. His arms envelop me, holding me close. Liam presses his face to my neck, and I can feel his heartbeat and his warm, steady breath. I'm surprised to find that I respond similarly. A strange feeling rises in my chest. Liam moves his face closer to my neck, and his breath caresses my skin. "Sometimes, too much," he says softly, "I'm here." I whisper back, "I'm always here," but inside I don't feel calm. My heart beats faster, and I don't understand why the heat feels overwhelming. Liam's innocence in his gestures is right, but his embrace is tighter than expected. The closeness feels inappropriate. "Thank you, Mom," he whispers with his eyes closed, and his breathing slows. He's fallen asleep, but I haven't. As I lie motionless, a question echoes in my mind, what the hell just happened? The way Liam hugged me was too intimate, and what's even more uncomfortable is that I can't ignore the feeling. At dawn, Liam stands next to me, the first rays of sunlight illuminating his face. My eyes stop at him. He still looks innocent, but inside, I feel completely confused. I rest my head on the pillow and take a deep breath. I need time to process what happened the night before. This was certainly not a normal night. The dawn arrives, and the sunlight gradually creeps into the room, waking me up. When I woke up, I realized that I was still carrying the burden of the emotions from the previous night. Liam is still asleep. I carefully get out of bed and head to the kitchen. I need time for myself, and I want to prepare something without waking him up. Liam always sleeps in late, but today I know I have to do something to soothe the anxiety that has taken hold of me as I struggle with my thoughts about last night. I begin gathering the ingredients to make pancakes. A few minutes later, Liam starts stirring. I see him peek through the door with his eyes still half closed. "Good morning," he says, but his tone is strange. He sounds tired and cautious at the same time. "Good morning, sweetheart," I reply, looking at him, trying to act normal. As I flip the pancakes, I feel his gaze fixed on me. There's something unusual in the way he looks at me. He's not indifferent like usual. It's as if he's watching every action I make, paying attention to every little detail. I move slowly, the heat from the stove enveloping me, just like the anxiety that keeps rising within me. Liam's eyes, just like the night before, are watching me. But this time, there's a strange intensity to them. I notice it. He's not just looking at me, he's scanning me, following the shape of my body, and I can feel it. For a moment, I try to ignore his gaze, but I realize he's noticed my discomfort. Deep inside, I feel my heart racing, but I try my best to remain calm, acting as if everything is still normal. Liam's behavior has changed too. He's usually more relaxed and cheerful with me, but this morning there's a distance, as if he's drawn a line but is gathering the courage to cross it. His eyes catch the morning light, looking at me as if he wants to say something, but I don't understand. I place the bread on a plate and hand it to him. "Enjoy," I say softly as Liam takes the plate. His hand grips it tightly, and his eyes meet mine. For a brief moment, I feel as if he's trying to see something deeper within me. I notice the worry reflected in my eyes, but Liam doesn't say anything. He just sits at the table for breakfast. He doesn't even look directly at me, but every time I move, his eyes shift from the ceiling and back to me with the same intensity, as though everything he does feels exaggerated in every small gesture. This has never happened to us before. The confusion inside me grew, and something whispered inside me that I needed to resolve this immediately, but I couldn't understand what it was. It was the way Liam looked at me and his behavior. They created a profound emotional confusion, and now, in the kitchen, with the strong scent of pancakes, that strange tension still lingered. Something stirred within me, but I resisted. I knew Liam was watching me, but all I wanted was to focus on my task. This morning, I was supposed to have a normal breakfast, but the warmth and unease ran through me as the sunlight came in, making me feel like something was completely different. When night fell, sleep began to weigh heavily on me, but something felt different. I could sense it but couldn't understand it. As night descended, the loneliness in my room grew heavier, but this time there was a shift. Liam's behavior toward me seemed to slowly evolve into something that frightened me, even though I found myself opening and closing my eyes. Through it all, I didn't feel anything drawing closer, but I didn't know what it was. Suddenly, I heard a noise, my eyes opened wide in urgency, and I could see a shadow moving slowly. Something inside me was surprised, everything became blurry, but then I realized the shadow was Liam, who had entered the room through the slightly open door. My eyes widened, and my heart began to race. My son had entered my room in the middle of the night, even though I knew I should be asleep. Liam's eyes sparkled in the darkness, with an intensity that made me remember the night before for a moment. I tried to focus, thinking, what should I do? The confusion inside me grew. Liam being in my room at this hour was already strange enough, but it also felt like an echo. Only this time, it was different. His eyes, his attitude, the way he approached everything, all of it mattered. Liam took another step forward, getting closer, and with a bit of moonlight, I could see his face more clearly, his eyes more determined than ever. Inside, something was screaming, "Don't stop," but at that moment, Liam suddenly leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. Everything happened in a moment. Time froze. In that moment, I felt as though the world was spinning around me, but I stood still. My son was just a step away from me, and when he kissed me, every emotion I had intertwined with each other. This was not something a mother expects from her son. In that moment, my heart began to beat rapidly. I pulled away quickly, trying to distance myself, but no words came out. My words vanished into the air like a whisper. Liam stepped back, disappointment in his eyes, but he still stood there in the room. "This isn't right, don't do this," I said in a trembling voice. My head spun, and my body was covered in sweat. I couldn't control my emotions. My son moving toward me like that was terrifying and complicated. But on the other hand, I couldn't deny the attention and focus he was giving me. This was wrong, I had to keep being a mother. The intense gaze in my son's eyes, a gaze I had never seen before, shocked me to the core. My heart was beating so fast, it felt like it was going to burst, but I knew I had to calm myself down. Liam quietly stepped back without saying a word, but the silence deepened in the darkness. Then Liam came closer again and touched my shoulder, a gesture I couldn't quite understand. His hands seemed to hover as if unsure, and despite everything, I was caught between wanting to address it and needing to distance myself. That night, whatever happened, when I woke up, I tried to understand what had occurred. Liam was not beside me, and I was alone in my room. I took a deep breath, trying to regain composure. I left the house without saying a word, the exhaustion in my eyes and the emptiness in my chest weighing me down. My steps felt heavy, as though I were lost, struggling with myself. The only thing I knew for sure was that I needed to understand what had happened. I questioned my feelings, but with each passing second, everything became more complicated. That night was so complex, no matter what had happened. The next morning, everything seemed like an incomprehensible dream. My eyes hurt, and my heart was racing, but I left the house without saying a word. I tried to hide what had happened between Liam and me as I struggled to understand it, deciding to suppress all my feelings, forgetting everything. But something inside me was breaking. I wondered why I felt this way. I felt lost in the chaos. My son is no longer a child, but I saw how he was acting toward me. What should I do? These questions kept swirling in my head, but there were still no answers.